Actually prepared to talk for today.
All right,
We'll get to it.
moving on.
This will be the boring part. No, cancel. You know, from the very beginning of his ministry, Dr. Holmes, who wrote The Science of Mind, he initiated this teaching. He said, try it for yourself. If it works for you, continue to live it, grow it, evolve into it. But if it doesn't work for you, try something else. And it's not for everybody. I can't imagine who it's not for, but some people, you know, it's not for everybody. But I personally believe the vast majority of people can benefit from this teaching. And one of the things I've talked repeatedly about is how do you evaluate a teaching? You judge it by its fruits. And one of the greatest tools that we have is the spiritual mind treatment. Too loud, Gina? Too low?
No, she's cold.
Oh,
She needs to be
it's
over here
off.
in her usual spots.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
okay. We're gonna go out and buy blankets, I think. 'Cause our
Susan
clothes-
can do it
When we
with a
come in the
broom.
morning, it's hot, and then we turn the air on, and then it gets too cold. So, anyway, the spiritual mind treatment, we've been talking about it for weeks, forever. It's the greatest tool you have in your tool bag. You can use it for anything. And we, as a group, I think, benefit from the application of it just in the very nature of who we become. We become more positive because we understand we have the power to make things happen in a positive way. But not always. Life isn't always a bowl of cherries. Or a box of chocolates. RScP says. Sometimes things happen that we're not prepared for. The Dalai Lama has often said, we can't control what happens in our lives. All we can control is how we react to it. And I think that's really the epitome of our teaching. We react affirmatively. We understand that life throws curveballs. Sometimes you just have to dig in and reach out deeper into the batter's box to hit that curveball. I'd tell you that's enough sports for the day, but it's not.
Oh, shut you down.
So we could debate for a long time whether we actually can control what happens in our lives, but we'll save that discussion for another time. Next talking circle, maybe. The title of today's talk is Treating Until Demonstration. And I'm trying to get rid of the jargon. Demonstration means until what we desire or something better happens. So we do our spiritual mind treatment until we reach our goal or something better. And Wednesday night, Reverend Liza gave a great class on spiritual mind treatment. So it is so important that we cannot overemphasize it. And I'm really hoping and expecting she'll do that class again in the future. It was pretty well attended, but I know we could have a lot more people. So from the spiritual science of mind point of view, a spiritual mind treatment is a seed planted in the soil of creative mind. No jargon there. But the practitioner's responsibility is only to plant the seed with the greatest amount of conviction he or she can put into that creative mind, that pure soil. And that will produce the best result. It's not necessary that the practitioner feels anything in that process. It doesn't feel any differently than when you're planting a seed. in the garden. Now, personally, I love that visual of planting a seed in the creative mind soil. And in the interest of eliminating jargon, let me talk about that. Look at our beautiful symbol on the wall. Thank you, Susan. That whole symbol, in its entirety, represents spirit. And some of you are more familiar with it than others. There are 3 levels of spirit, not unlike many religions have some sort of holy trinity. In ours, the top level is God, spirit, absolute, conscious mind, personalness. There's an entire list of words to describe spirit. The easiest is God, spirit. Easy to remember. The middle level, and that's the one I want to talk about the most today, is soul. Buddhists call it karma. We call it the creative medium, universal law, impersonal, subconscious mind, neutral. Those are all words to describe that level too. Then the third level is body, effect, form, results. And here's one you may not expect: time, space, things. And obviously the V that comes down into it is top level God spirit descends through all, and becomes form, becomes us. That picture, I think, is just amazing how well thought out it was. So level 2, that's the soil in which we plant a seed, literally through a spiritual mind treatment. It's pure. It's spirit. We don't know how it works. We just know that it works. It's the neutral, blind force, the medium of all thought. When we talk about planting a seed in the fertile soil of mind, that's it. It doesn't judge whether your thought is good or bad, or benefits you or not. It just responds. It responds to the energy of your thoughts, your beliefs, and remember, subconscious. That's the subconscious strata. It responds to your subconscious. So when I say you have to do it with conviction, sometimes you have to overcome what's lying in your subconscious you're not even aware of. That's where our teaching comes in and really helps. It's where you place your energy. It's where that strata, that fertile soil, responds. Now, you all know that we live on a ranch north of town. And you may know that I love to dig in the dirt. Love to plant. Love to plant. Don't love to weed. But I love to plant. Possibly it's because I'm feeling that. So last year, I bought a plow for my tractor. Now I can plow. Ooh, I'm almost like a real farmer. So I went big on my garden this year. I planted seed potatoes. Beautiful, almost straight lines. I planted corn, some from seedlings, other from seeds. So the big garden, which is every bit as long as this room and a little wider, is potatoes and corn. So according to my plan and everything we think we know about science of mind, what can I expect to harvest from my garden?
Potatoes and corn.
Good choice.
I would think.
Well, we know that our thoughts aren't always as straightforward and clear
I'm sorry.
as we think. Somebody wanted to answer the question, but they weren't here. So in addition to potatoes and corn, which that's what our intention was, sometimes our thinking gets a little cloudy and other things crop up. As my beautiful crops began to grow, the weeds were easy to recognize, and they were removed from my thoughts and my garden. But sometimes, not sometimes, there was something else growing in the garden, and I had no idea what it was. All I knew was, this is something different. Don't know how it got there. I'm not going to pull it. I know it's something important. There were these little patches of it all around the garden, growing. So I just kept watering, didn't pull them out. I did thin them out because there'd be like 20 plants in a thing this size, so I pulled that down to 3 or 4. And as the garden grew, I recognized, there's a potential threat or 2 or 3 around the garden. I have a whole garden full of corn, and I have an unlimited supply of crows. The crows feed off what we feed the guineas and the peacocks as free range, so the food's always out on the ground. So we have crows and quail and lots of ground squirrels. Lots of ground squirrels. They have unlimited food source, they have unlimited water, they have shelter. So the mystery began to become more clear. I did a spiritual mind treatment early on to protect the garden from the predators. And I did say, I didn't specify how, I just said, I expect to get the bulk of the crop. The little animals can get some of it, but I am getting the bulk of the crop. And I let it go. So as these unknown plants grew, didn't take long to recognize they are sunflowers. Sunflowers, they grow huge, big. And that solved the mystery of where they came from. The ground squirrels were getting the sunflower seeds out of the bird food, carrying it off and burying it in the garden. Mixed blessing, right? Now I got one more thing attracting all these animals to the garden. But guess what? The critters, the crows, the ground squirrels, they all love sunflowers more than they love corn or potatoes.
Nice. See?
They planted their own crop, and then they focused on the sunflowers. I don't think I lost one piece of corn to a crow. A few goats got in. That's a separate story. So when I tell you that the universe conspires to my benefit, believe it. But just like it does for me, it does for you. When I applied the spiritual mind treatment to my garden, I had no idea how it would work. And I am completely blown away by how that all took place. We didn't get hardly any sunflower seeds. Those critters worked them over. They left everything else alone. Pretty interesting. So I do want to give you some science of mind stuff. Here's a quote from Dr. Holmes in Science of Mind. Page 224, paragraph 5, for those following along at home. And I do find out people actually question some stuff. Always come to a complete conclusion when giving a treatment. Always feel that it is done, complete and perfect, giving thanks for it. However, it becomes objectified. Each treatment should be repeated daily until a healing takes place. If it takes 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years, the treatment must be kept up until a healing is accomplished. That's, we don't talk about that a lot. We talk about, like we do here on Sunday mornings, 2-minute miracles. You get a treatment and go. But we also do the prayer requests. And the prayer request box, the prayer team, which is Kate, Liza, myself, and another lady who's loosely attached to us as a practitioner, we do that all week. So it does get repeated over and over and over. Now, to me, here's a really clear, powerful message from Dr. Holmes. Right thought, constantly poured into consciousness, will eventually purify it. Discord might be likened to a bottle of impure water. Healing might be likened to the process of dropping pure water into the bottle, a drop at a time, until the whole is clean and pure. Now let's think about what Dr. Holmes told us there. And I'm going back to the farm for an example. Most farmers, when they're feeding and watering, they turn the water on first and start filling the trough while they go about other tasks and feeding the animals and stuff. So invariably, the farmer, not me, forgets about the water and it overflows the trough. Well, the longer you overflow it, the cleaner that trough gets. That water becomes crystal clear, pure water. It's one way to clean your tank. So what can we learn from that experience? Not that I've done it more than 100 times. First I wanted to get angry with myself, and then I thought, Spirit takes water wherever it wants to go. And there might be little tiny microbes in the soil or seeds that need that water that I don't know about. So I'm not going to worry about it. The other thing that we know is every drop of water ever on earth is still on earth. We don't waste water. You can't waste water. What we do know is right now, less of it's in ice form than usual. And that's why we have hurricanes and things like that. But I digress. The dirty water just washes away as if it never existed. Kind of like our cloudy thoughts. When we get confused, when we get upset. That's what Dr. Holmes was talking about in that earlier quote. And I'll repeat. Right thought, constantly poured into consciousness, will eventually purify it. Right thought, poured into consciousness, was it purify or clarify? Purify. You can also say clarify. Now, I was going to bring in a little science example where you take a glass of water and you put 3 drops of food coloring in it, and then you add Clorox and a teaspoon of baking soda. And I drove Susan out of the house when I was trying it. She was like, the smell is horrible. So I said, well, maybe we shouldn't bring it in for this. But it clears the water. And it's an example of what Dr. Holmes was talking about. When you put pure consciousness back into your thinking, everything becomes clear. So, how then do we return to the positive thinking we appreciate? That's a trick question. The answer was the question. Did you get that? How then do we return to the positive thinking, comma, we appreciate? Appreciation is one of the greatest ways to get back into that clarity, that consciousness. Appreciation, gratitude. It's just one of many, but to me it's the easiest. If I'm upset, if I'm experiencing turbidity in the consciousness, the water within, and remember we start out at a pretty high percentage of water, so this has lots of symbolism. How do we clarify it? How do we purify it? I begin with appreciation. I can always find something to appreciate. As a sports fan, you might have noticed, we know athletes are trained to never, ever give up. And that's what we have to do with spiritual mind treatment. Never, ever give up until it's done. The Chicago Cubs won the World Series a couple years ago after not winning for 108 years. They didn't give up. They were here. Their fans are the most dedicated, loyal fans in the world. They never gave up. Now they expect to win it every year. When you look at athletes, Michael Phelps, the great swimmer, he explains the reason he was the hardest, most dedicated trainer ever. I was trying to be as prepared as I could. I tried to see what I could do, what my potential was. I just really didn't know what it took. Everyone was comparing me to Mark Spitz, he says. But for me, it was never about beating Mark Spitz. It never was. It was about becoming the first Michael Phelps, not the second Mark Spitz. You have to follow your own path, but fight, fight, fight. Never give up. Then athletes never quit, or they're not successful. We've all seen track athletes pull a muscle and hop, crawl, whatever to the finish line. I showed a video of that one time. I don't know if anyone remembers. Yes, the Jamaican bobsled team really did pick up their bobsled and carry it across the finish line. And that's the mentality we need to take with spiritual mind treatment. Until the goal is reached, we're not done. Reverend Kushner, I don't even know if I mentioned her, who submitted the outline, has a story here. And I do want, we're running it low, but we started late. So she shared a story in this outline that's really important. And I'll just read it from her story. My cat Colette developed diabetes. The vet told me I had to give her insulin shots twice a day, every 12 hours, and I had to measure the sugar in her urine by dipping a stick into her excretions once a day. I knew that the cure wasn't going to happen with the insulin, and I was determined to have the diagnosis go away completely. But when I saw the amount of sugar on the measuring stick, I wondered how I was going to know the truth, because you have to know the truth. Well, I was looking at the evidence of the disease. It came into my head in a flash that what I was measuring with the dipstick was how much more truth I needed to know. Now that's her. So I began treating and giving her the insulin shots. every time she took the dipstick and measured the sugar, she used that as the measure of how much more truth she needed to know. So when the sugar measurement was down halfway, I knew I was halfway there in knowing the truth. Suffice it to say, this is her words, I reached 0 on the stick and in consciousness. The vet informed me after a month, the cat no longer needed insulin injections, and after 2 months, she no longer had diabetes. Each one of us has that power. Find a way. Begin, take that step, and then never, ever give up. So in summary, when you have decided to change a condition through spiritual mind treatment, state your intention and don't give up on your first, third, or even 100th treatment. Remember, the water becomes clear the more consciousness you put into it. Remember Dr. Holmes' quote, right thought, constantly poured into consciousness, will eventually purify it. Trust that your spiritual work, your right thought, pours into the universal law, and that there is an end point, a completion, when your harvest is manifested. Namaste. Here's a quick affirmation. We're running out of time. Good and more good is mine.